The transmission. The morning started like any other at the Deep Space Monitoring Station in Australia. Dr. James Martinez was finishing his night shift when the computers began screaming alerts. Every receiver on Earth picked up the same signal, a transmission that would change everything. The message was simple, broadcast in broken English across multiple frequencies. It came from somewhere beyond the solar system, desperate and terrified. Please, anyone listening, we are the last ship of planet Keth. Our world is gone. The hunters found us. They take everything, kill everything. We tried to run, but they follow. Warning to all worlds, the hunters come for you next. They know about your planet now. They know about Earth. We tried to hide your location, but they made us tell them. We are sorry, so sorry. The hunters are coming. The transmission ended with coordinates to a dying ship drifting near Jupiter's orbit. Within hours, every major government on Earth had the recording. Military bases went to high alert. Scientists worked frantically to decode the alien technology that sent the message. The world held its breath. President Williams called an emergency meeting with world leaders. General Stone, head of Earth's newly formed Space Defense Force, stood before a room full of frightened politicians. The ship is real, Stone announced. Our deep space probes confirmed it. Hull breach, life support failing. We estimate one survivor aboard, maybe two. But here's what worries me more. Long-range sensors show something else coming. Something big moving fast toward our system. Dr. Elena Ross, Earth's top xenobiologist, studied the alien text fragments they had decoded. Based on their warnings, these hunters aren't just conquerors. They're something worse. The fragments suggest they don't just take planets. They harvest them completely. Every living thing, every resource, leaving nothing but dead rock. The room fell silent. For decades, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was terrifying. How long do we have? Williams asked. Stone checked his reports. Best estimate? 6 months before they reach the outer solar system. Maybe less. Can we fight them? Madam President, we don't even know what we're fighting yet. But I'll tell you this. Earth has never faced a threat like this before. We need to prepare for war. Over the next days, rescue ships raced to reach the alien vessel. The world watched as humanity made first contact with a dying alien named Vel, one of the last survivors of a peaceful planet called Keth. Through broken communication, Vel painted a picture of horror. The hunters were an ancient race that consumed entire star systems. They had technology beyond anything the peaceful worlds could fight. They moved from system to system like a plague, leaving only empty space behind. Your people, Vel whispered through the translator. They live on Deathworld, yes? Dangerous. Planet with storms and predators? The human rescuers looked confused. Earth seemed normal to them. Yes, one of them answered. We have storms and dangerous animals. Vel's alien features showed something that might have been hope. Deathworld people are different. Maybe you can fight where we could not. The hunters, they fear only one thing. They fear Deathworld species. As news spread across Earth, something awakened in humanity that had been sleeping since their earliest days. The same spirit that had driven them to hunt mammoths with stone spears, to cross dangerous oceans, to survive ice ages and plagues. The governments began mobilizing everything. Every nuclear weapon, every military force, every scientist and engineer. But more than that, they began to remember what humans really were. They were the species that had climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet where everything tried to kill them. They were the descendants of hunters who brought down creatures 10 times their size. They were the children of survivors who had lived through disasters that would have ended other species. As the first reports came in of massive alien ships entering the outer solar system, President Williams addressed the world. For too long, we've forgotten what we are, she said. We're not just another species on a peaceful planet. We're humans. We're from Earth. And Earth doesn't raise victims. It raises survivors. These hunters think they're coming to harvest another easy target. They're wrong. They're about to learn why the galaxy should fear Deathworlders. Across the planet, military factories roared to life. Space elevators carried weapons into orbit. Humanity began to show its true face. Not the face of a peaceful civilization, but the face of apex predators preparing for the hunt of their lives. The hunters were coming to harvest Earth, but Earth was ready to show them what real monsters looked like. Awakening the Beast 3 months after the transmission, Earth had transformed into something unrecognizable. What had been a collection of competing nations was now a unified war machine. The threat of extinction had done what centuries of diplomacy could not. It had made humanity one. General Stone stood in the newly constructed war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Screens showed the movement of alien ships past Neptune's orbit. The hunters were coming, just as Vel had warned. "Status report," Stone commanded. Colonel Davis, his second-in-command, pulled up holographic displays. "Project Deathworld is ahead of schedule. Every major city has underground bunkers. We've moved critical populations to the hardest targets to crack. Underground facilities in places like the Himalayas and the Amazon basin." Dr. Ross entered the room carrying data tablets. "We've learned more from Vel about their tactics. The hunters don't just attack, they study their prey first. They send scout ships to analyze defenses looking for weaknesses. They expect civilizations to huddle in cities, making them easy targets. So we give them what they expect to see." Stone nodded. "While our real forces prepare in the shadows." The last 3 months had seen the greatest mobilization in human history. But it wasn't just about building weapons, it was about remembering what humans really were. In the Amazon, special forces trained with indigenous hunters, learning to move silently through the deadliest jungle on Earth. In the Arctic, soldiers learned to survive in conditions that would kill most aliens in minutes. In Australia, teams practiced fighting, in deserts where the sun could cook you and every animal was venomous. Major Kate Foster ran the Special Operations Division. She had been tasked with something that sounded impossible, training humans to fight like the apex predators they were born to be. "The mistake other species make," she told her troops, "is thinking intelligence makes you civilized. They're wrong. Intelligence makes you a better predator. We're going to show these hunters what evolution on a death world really creates." The training was brutal. Soldiers learned to fight in zero gravity, underwater, in toxic atmospheres. They practiced hunting, in packs using Earth's terrain as a weapon. They studied every predator on Earth, from wolves to sharks to the tiny parasites that could kill with a single bite. But humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their weapons or their training. It was their nature. Dr. Martinez, now heading the Alien Psychology Division, made a disturbing discovery. "We've analyzed the hunters' previous attacks through Vel's memories. They always follow the same pattern. They appear in overwhelming force, the target species surrenders or dies quickly, then they harvest everything." "What are you saying?" Stone asked. "They've never fought a real war. They've never faced an enemy that doesn't give up. Every species they've encountered either had superior technology and fled, or inferior technology and died quickly. They've never faced an enemy that's willing to fight to the last breath." President Williams visited the facilities personally. She watched soldiers train, saw the weapons being built, observed the preparations. What she saw both terrified and inspired her. "We're not the same species that sent peaceful messages to the stars 40 years ago," she realized. "We're becoming something else, something harder." The change was visible everywhere. Children learned survival skills alongside their regular studies. Farmers grew crops in hidden underground facilities. Engineers designed weapons that used Earth's gravity and atmosphere as advantages. Artists created propaganda that reminded people of humanity's predatory heritage. In space, automated defense platforms drifted silently in the asteroid belt, disguised as rocks. On the moon, railguns pointed toward the outer system. Mars became a fortress world, its entire population working to create weapons of war. But the most important change was in humanity itself. The comfortable, peaceful civilization was gone. What remained was older, harder, more dangerous. Humans remembered they were descendants of hunters who had killed mammoths with sharp sticks. They were the children of survivors who had lived through ice ages by being too stubborn to die. Vel, recovering in a medical facility, watched human news broadcasts with growing amazement. Through the translator, the alien tried to explain what was happening. Other species, when they face hunters, they become afraid, hide, run. But your people, they become angry, like wounded predators. This is why hunters fear Deathworld species. Not because you have better weapons, because you fight like you have nothing to lose. As the hunter fleet crossed Saturn's orbit, humanity made final preparations. Every major city appeared to be defending itself in the traditional way. Shields, barriers, obvious military installations. But hidden beneath the earth, in the depths of jungles and mountains, the real defenders waited. Earth had spent 3 months remembering what it was. Now it was time to show the galaxy why apex predators were apex predators. First blood. The hunter fleet arrived at Jupiter's orbit like a swarm of metallic locusts. Their ships were massive, each one the size of a city, designed to strip mine entire planets. For 1,000 years, no species had ever stood against them successfully. Commander Vax led the hunter fleet from the flagship. Like all hunters, he was tall, insectoid, with compound eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. His species had evolved on a peaceful world with no predators. They had become the galaxy's apex species through technology alone, not through violence. Initial scans of the target world, Vax commanded. The scanner operator, a younger hunter named Kix, studied the displays with confusion. Commander, the readings are unusual. The planet shows signs of massive electromagnetic activity, possible industrial mobilization. Vax's antennae twitched with amusement. They always try to fight it first. Send the probe ships. Let them see our power. Once they understand they cannot win, they will surrender like all the others. But the humans weren't planning to surrender. Deep in the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Torres commanded the Earth Defense Fleet from a hidden underwater base. Submarines loaded with nuclear torpedoes waited in the dark depths. Above them, what appeared to be normal shipping lanes hid weapons platforms that could rise from the ocean floor in minutes. Hunter probe ships entering Mars orbit, reported Lieutenant Brooks. 18 vessels heading for Earth. Torres smiled grimly. Let them come. All units, maintain radio silence. They want to study us? Let's give them something to study. The probe ships descended toward Earth's atmosphere, expecting to find frightened aliens huddled in obvious defensive positions. Instead, they found something that confused them completely. Earth's major cities were defended, but not well. The military installations were visible and seemed poorly positioned. Radio communications were chaotic and panicked. To hunter eyes, it looked like a primitive species preparing for a hopeless last stand. Commander Vax reviewed the probe reports with satisfaction. Standard harvest protocol. The species shows minimal technological development, some nuclear capability, but their delivery systems are primitive. They have positioned their defenses in predictable locations. But Vax had made the mistake every hunter before him had made. He was judging Earth by the standards of civilized worlds. He expected humans to fight like rational beings who understood when they were beaten. The real defense began when the probe ships tried to return to the main fleet. Hidden in the asteroid belt, automated weapon platforms activated. What the hunters had scanned as ordinary rocks suddenly revealed themselves as railgun batteries, firing tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds. The first probe ship died instantly, its hull torn apart before its crew could even scream. The second managed to transmit a warning before nuclear mines, disguised as space debris, turned it into expanding plasma. In space around Earth, the trap revealed itself. Satellites that had seemed like communication relays deployed weapon systems. The moon opened hidden bays, revealing missile batteries that had been carved into the rock itself. Mars showed its true face, not a peaceful colony, but a fortress world bristling with weapons. But the real surprise came when the surviving probe ships tried to land on Earth. Major Foster's special operations teams had been waiting in the Amazon rainforest for weeks. When the alien ship touched down in what the hunters thought was an empty clearing, they discovered they had landed in the middle of humanity's most dangerous training ground. The hunters who emerged from the ship were tall, graceful beings adapted for peaceful worlds. They wore environmental suits and carried scanning equipment. expecting to catalog another helpless species. Instead, they met humans who had spent 3 months learning to hunt the most dangerous predators on Earth. The battle was over in minutes. Humans struck from the trees, from underground tunnels, from every shadow. They moved like the jungle cats they had studied, silent and deadly. The hunters' advanced technology meant nothing when human soldiers dropped from branches above them or erupted from camouflaged positions underfoot. Foster herself killed the probe ship's commander with a knife, looking into his compound eyes as he died. "Welcome to Earth," she whispered. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Probe ships that landed in the Arctic were destroyed by soldiers who fought like polar bears, patient and unstoppable. Ships that tried to land in the Australian outback found humans who hunted like dingoes working in deadly packs. Commander Vax watched his probe fleet die with growing alarm. This wasn't how harvests were supposed to go. Species were supposed to surrender when they saw hunter technology. They weren't supposed to fight like animals. "Commander," Kix reported, his voice shaking. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's directed at us." The transmission came from every radio source on Earth simultaneously. President Williams's voice reached the hunter fleet, calm and deadly. "This is Earth. You came here to harvest us. You expected us to surrender like civilized beings. But we're not civilized. We're humans. We're from a Deathworld. And Deathworld species don't surrender. We hunt." "The hunt begins," Commander Vax stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. In a single day, he had lost 18 probe ships. More casualties than the hunter fleet had suffered in the last century of harvests. The species on this world wasn't following the pattern. They weren't acting like prey. "Status of the main fleet," he demanded. Kix's mandibles clicked nervously. "All ships report combat ready, Commander, but the enemy, they're not where our scans indicated they should be." That was the problem. Every previous harvest had been simple. Scan the planet, identify the population centers, destroy the obvious military installations, then begin harvesting. But Earth's real military wasn't where the scan said it should be. Hidden beneath the Amazon rainforest, General Stone coordinated humanity's response from a bunker that had been carved out of solid rock. The facility was invisible to orbital scans, powered by geothermal energy and connected by tunnels to similar bases across the planet. "Phase 1 complete," reported Colonel Davis. "All probe ships destroyed. The hunters are now flying blind. They have no idea what our real capabilities are." Dr. Ross studied alien tactical patterns they had learned from Vel. "The hunters always follow the same strategy. They destroy obvious targets first: cities, military bases, anything that looks important. They expect their enemies to cluster together for protection, so we give them empty targets while our real forces stay hidden." Stone nodded. "What's the status of the evacuation?" 90% of major population centers have been cleared. Everyone's in the deep shelters or dispersed into the wilderness areas. The hunters will find cities, but not many people. Above them, the hunter fleet began its attack on what they thought was Earth civilization. The orbital bombardment was devastating. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. Every major city was hit by energy beams that could crack mountains. The attacks were precise, designed to destroy infrastructure while leaving the planet habitable for harvesting. But the cities were mostly empty. What the hunters destroyed were shells, buildings, and monuments, but not people. Humanity had learned from every predator species on Earth. When threatened, they scattered. When hunting, they came together. Commander Vax watched the bombardment with satisfaction. Standard pattern confirmed. Population centers neutralized. Begin landing operations. That's when the real war began. The hunter landing craft were designed for peaceful worlds. They were large, slow, and obvious, perfect for intimidating species that had never seen real warfare. But they were completely wrong for fighting humans. The first wave of landing craft descended toward the ruins of major cities, expecting to find survivors hiding in the rubble. Instead, they found kill zones that humanity had spent months preparing. The ruins of Chicago, Major Foster's team waited in positions that were invisible from above. The landing craft touched down in what looked like an empty plaza. The moment the alien troops emerged, the humans struck. The attack came from everywhere, at once. Explosives buried in rubble, snipers in ruined buildings, soldiers emerging from sewer systems and subway tunnels. The hunters found themselves fighting an enemy that moved like ghosts and struck like lightning. But the real shock came when the hunters tried to retreat to their ships. The landing craft should have been safe, heavily armored, well defended. But humans had spent months studying every weakness, every vulnerability. They came at the ships like army ants, covering every surface, finding every gap in the armor. Foster personally led the assault on the command ship. She and her team moved across the hull like spiders, using magnetic clamps and climbing gear that would have been impossible for most species. They found the ship's main airlock and burned through it with thermite charges. The battle inside the ship was brutal and brief. The hunters were tall, strong, and had advanced weapons, but they had never fought an enemy in close quarters. They had never faced beings that were willing to die to kill you. Foster's knife found the ship commander's throat just as his energy weapon found her chest. They died together, but the human smiled as the light faded from her eyes. She knew her team would take the ship. Similar battles erupted across the planet. Every landing zone became a slaughter. Hunter troops, expecting to face frightened civilians, or organized military units instead, met humans who fought like wild animals, clever, vicious, and absolutely without mercy. In his flagship, Commander Vax watched his invasion force die. The tactical displays showed landing craft going silent one by one. The few that managed to escape brought reports that made no sense. The enemy fights with no regard for survival, one commander reported. They attack positions they cannot win. They sacrifice themselves to damage our equipment. They are not rational. Vax's compound eyes reflected the burning cities below. He was beginning to understand something that terrified him. The species on this world didn't fight like civilized beings trying to survive. They fought, like predators protecting their territory. Deathworld's judgment, the hunter fleet hung in Earth's orbit like wounded giants. In 3 days of fighting, Commander Vax had lost 60% of his ground forces and half his landing craft. The reports coming back from the planet's surface painted a picture of warfare unlike anything in hunter history. Commander, Kix reported, his voice barely controlled. The remaining ground forces are requesting immediate evacuation. They report the enemy is hunting them. Vax studied the tactical displays with growing horror. The humans weren't just defending their world, they were systematically destroying every hunter force that had landed. Worse, they were learning from each battle, adapting their tactics, becoming more efficient killers. Impossible, Vax whispered. No species fights like this, no rational being sacrifices so much for so little gain. But humans weren't rational. They were something the hunters had never encountered before. A species that had evolved to be the ultimate predators on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Deep beneath the Sahara Desert, in a bunker that had once been a natural cave system, General Stone received reports from across the planet. The news was better than he had dared hope. Australian forces report complete elimination of hunter landing zones, Colonel Davis announced. No survivors. The enemy forces that landed in the outback lasted less than 6 hours. Dr. Ross added her own report. Antarctic stations confirm destruction of the hunter ice mining operation. Turns out aliens from warm worlds don't handle extreme cold very well. Our forces didn't even need to fight. The environment did most of the work. But the most satisfying report came from the Amazon, where Major Foster's successor, Captain Ryan, had led his teams in the complete destruction of the largest hunter landing force. They tried to establish a base in the rainforest, Ryan reported, via encrypted communication. Apparently they thought the jungle was just plants. They had no idea they were setting up camp in the middle of Earth's most efficient killing ground. The hunters had learned too late that Earth's jungles weren't just full of dangerous animals. They were full of humans who had learned to fight like those animals. Captain Ryan's forces had moved through the trees like jaguars, struck from the water like crocodiles, and disappeared into the undergrowth like the thousands of deadly creatures that called the Amazon home. President Williams, speaking from a secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, addressed the world for what everyone knew might be the last time. "My fellow humans," she began, 3 days ago an alien fleet came to our world expecting to find easy prey. They thought we were just another civilized species that would surrender when faced with superior technology. They were wrong. Around the world, in hidden bunkers and wilderness camps, humans listened to their leaders' words with grim satisfaction. We have shown them what Deathworld species really are. We have proven that intelligence doesn't make you civilized. It makes you a more efficient predator. But now comes the real test. The hunters will try to destroy our world from orbit rather than face us on the ground. They will try to crack our planet like an egg. Above them, that's exactly what Commander Vax was planning. The ground invasion had been a disaster. The only option left was complete planetary destruction. "Prepare the planet crackers," Vax ordered. "We will destroy this world completely. Better to lose the harvest than risk these creatures spreading to other systems." But Vax had made the same mistake every enemy of humanity had made throughout history. He thought like a civilized being. He assumed his enemy would fight like a civilized being. He never considered that humans might have a plan that was completely insane. Admiral Torres, commanding the hidden space forces from her underwater base, smiled as she received the signal she had been waiting for. "All units," she broadcast across. "Every human military frequency. Operation Death Wishes go. Repeat, Operation Death Wishes go." Around the solar system, humanity revealed its final secret. The evacuation to deep shelters hadn't just been to protect the population. It had been to hide the fact that Earth's entire military infrastructure was mobile. Ships emerged from the ocean depths, from hidden bases on the moon, from camouflaged positions in the asteroid belt. But these weren't normal military vessels. These were weapons that could only have been built by a species that had learned to fight dirty. The first wave was simple, nuclear-powered ramming ships, designed to crash into hunter vessels at maximum velocity. No shields, no fancy weapons, just raw kinetic energy delivered by crews who had volunteered for one-way missions. The second wave was worse. Ships that had been converted into giant shotguns, loaded with thousands of tungsten pellets and designed to get close enough to hunter vessels to deliver devastating point-blank fire. The third wave was the most terrifying of all. Human crews in small, fast ships that used the hunter's own size against them. They flew into the massive alien vessels like antibodies attacking a virus, boarding them through any opening they could find. Commander Vax watched his fleet die around him and finally understood the truth. The hunters weren't fighting a civilized species. They were fighting something that had evolved to kill anything that threatened it. They were fighting Deathworlders. And Deathworlders didn't just fight to win. They fought to make sure their enemies never threatened anyone again. As his flagship's hull was breached by human boarding parties, Vax sent one final message to the hunter homeworld. "Do not come to this system. Do not approach the third planet. The species there, they are not prey. They are the hunters now." The message was humanity's first step toward becoming the galaxy's new apex predators. The hunters had awakened Earth's wrath, and now the Deathworlders were coming for them all.